Military girlfriend cheats. Posted by Impossible. Ad 2433. If you like these stories and want to see more, please like and subscribe. Here goes nothing. Lol. Warning. This chain of events, although completely true and are traumatizing for me, can also be very triggering for others, so read at your own discretion. Details will be graphic. I guess why I'm here on Reddit is because of my situation with my ex-girlfriend, and I don't have many friends to talk to, so I guess this type of outlet could be therapy for me. It all started when I joined the military, gonna keep things vague for now. After I joined, I had a going away party with some family, and I had a cousin recommend me to get Tinder, so I eventually signed up for Tinder and began having my first encounters in the dating scene. As I matched with multiple women and got to talk to many people, one girl, let's call her Sarah, caught my eye, and we immediately hit it off. We began talking, and after a short time, I asked for her number. We clicked instantly, and we began to talk all day, every day. I asked her on a date, and we had a great date. We got food, went out to the park, and as the night came, we ended up watching a movie at her place. Not once in my mind was sex a thing that came up as an idea, as I genuinely enjoyed spending time with this girl. Time passed by, and we couldn't seem to be apart, so I ended up spending the night with this girl. We kissed, and I ended up asking her to be my girlfriend formally. She said yes, even though she had to think about it due to the long distance scenario of me being in the military and her attending college across the country. We ended up going on a few more dates before I left for boot camp, and she told me she loved me, and during that time, I said it back. I ended up taking her virginity before I left, and for the months that I was gone during boot camp, she would write to me, and I would write back. After I got out of boot camp, we ended up going back to the same routine of talking every day and having virtual dates. I flew her out to where I was attending classes, and we even went on more dates. Things went so good that we even started to consider marriage, and I proposed the idea of her moving in with me. I moved again to California, and I eventually ended up flying her out again, and for the most part, the trip was perfect. We went to an amusement park downtown and the beach. This is where the story went downhill. Fast. We had been together for almost a year, and on her last day in California with me, we decided to go to the beach because her flight was at night. We packed a bag, and we put all of our belongings/valuables in my bag, including our phones. I had to change into my swim shorts, so I told her I would go to the bathroom to change, and when I opened the bag I noticed her phone was in there. Now I was pretty conflicted because while I wanted to trust her, I had my doubts because previously, before our trip, she would behave weirdly and always get dolled up to go to a specific class. I picked up her phone, and I opened it since I knew her password. 2 weeks into boot camp, she had begun texting a security guard who worked at her apartment complex. I read with horror as I saw him calling her all types of sexy and bae and how he felt that her jeans looked so good on her, and her response was, "You should have hugged me." I initially thought that this was just some flirtatious interaction, and although I was mad, it seemed to end at that point after she told him that she didn't want to communicate with him anymore. I keep looking. Earlier that day, I joked about going on her phone and calling her mother, and I noticed she became really defensive, saying, "What my mom and I talk about is private." I looked through the messages, and to my surprise, another guy, let's call him Mark for this story, was being discussed with her mom, and her mom was in on it. The conversation went like this. "Sarah, my name, knows me too well. I came back from class with the tall guy and he's, me, like, why are you in such a good mood? And I'm like, I'm not, what are you talking about? Sarah's mom, you're making it a habit. Sarah, I know, frown. His intuition is crazy, though. He won't let it go. Sarah's mom, I'm impressed. Always follow your gut. My name, fist emoji. Sarah, yeah, but he needs to stop before his feelings get hurt. Plus, he like, why are you all dolled up for class?" I keep going through messages, and I see one to her friend, and she basically details how she almost got caught cheating, and I had no idea. One night she went out with her girlfriend, and at around 11, they came back, but then Sarah eventually ended up going back out with a guy, all while I think she was still out with her girlfriend. She basically got in his car and disappeared for hours, and I began to worry because I thought she was in trouble, so naturally, I called and called with no answer, so I began calling her friends and her school, wondering where she was at and if she's okay. She doesn't answer because she's in the car with him and he knows that she was in a relationship and that didn't matter to either of them. At around 2 a.m., I got calls and messages from her telling me how sorry she was and that her phone died and she left it in her room to charge. The whole time she's riding around with this guy and basically entertaining him. I've seen all I needed to see at this point, and I'm emotionally numb. I was too hurt to be mad and too mad to be hurt. I spent thousands of dollars planning these trips and even went so far as to go nearly broke for this girl, and this is how I'm repaid. I come out of the bathroom, and we sit out by the beach for 20 minutes with me, collecting my thoughts. I decided to tell her what I saw, and her initial reaction was, "You went through my phone?" I tell her I did, and I open her phone again and show her what I see. I tell her we're over, then the crocodile tears come. She starts telling me how she didn't mean to disrespect me and how she didn't feel like it was cheating. We go back to my room where I stay because I'm over that day already. She breaks down crying, asking me to forgive her and how she believed that she loved me and what she did was a mistake. After hours of talking and crying, I eventually just say, "Let it go, I'll let you know later." I took her to the airport, and I ended up walking away when she got to her terminal, and she broke down crying. I turned and saw her in the middle of the airport crying, and I came to walk her out. And I give her a hug because I still have that feeling of love for her. I told her I'll think about forgiving her, and I left. I went home, and the first phase of emotional ups and downs came. I began feeling angry again about how she and her mother mocked me. All while I was the perfect boyfriend to her. I even ended up getting her mother gifts and helping her adult mother with assignments to get her certifications for the school that she attended as well. I called Sarah as she boarded her plane, and I told her I could not get back to her. She said, "Okay," and I hung up. The next morning we began talking, and I wasn't as angry as I was that night, and we eventually agreed to work on things. I ended up getting a call from my mother saying that my grandmother, who had been fighting cancer for some time, was going through the final stages and that she was dying. They gave her 3 to 6 months to live, so I immediately flew there and tried to spend time with her, all while my girlfriend still wanted to spend time with me, so I, for some stupid reason, tried to balance FaceTiming my girlfriend and spending time with my grandmother. 3 days after I arrived at my grandmother's house, I was woken up in the middle of the night by my mom, and she asked me to help with the bed that my grandmother was in because she complained that it was too laid back and she wanted elevation. Out of nowhere, she began throwing up this horrible black fluid, and I've seen her do it before but never this much. She started throwing up more and more and eventually started gargling. During the frenzy of trying to help my grandmother breathe and calling 911, I ended up texting my girlfriend for some reason and telling her, "I think it's happening." I told her she was choking on fluids, and I didn't know what to do. I panicked. She sent me an article and said to maybe put her on her side, but by the time I received the message, paramedics pronounced her dead at the scene. I stayed up so late that night and eventually ended up FaceTiming my girl so I would have somebody to be with during this time, and she said she would be there for me. We kept talking, and everything seemed as if she was actually remorseful and how we both wanted to repair our relationship until 3 days after my grandmother died. The funeral hadn't even come, and Sarah told me she needed space and time to be herself and how she felt codependent of me and how she needed to be single to be able to do anything she wanted without worrying about if she could, or couldn't do it, and me being in the picture stood in the way of that. She said that she wanted to marry me one day, but she needed to have this period so she could be sure that she was doing this because it was her choice. At this point, I'm at the lowest point I've ever been in my life, and I basically begged her to stay for some dumb reason, and she stayed but began to act weird. She started becoming cold and distant, and after a couple of weeks of a weird place, she ended up just breaking up with me as someone who gave everything to this girl mentally, emotionally and monetarily, and she took that and ran with it. I began saving for a ring even before this trip, and my entire manhood was just broken by this girl. I tried to resume life as normal, but I couldn't. I would cry myself to sleep at night, and I didn't know whether I was grieving or hurt about my ex. I would go to class completely zoned out. and I couldn't focus on saving my life. I even broke down while taking one of my tests, which led my instructors to recommend me to a therapist. I tried talking to a therapist and other people, but it all led to them basically saying, "Get over it." One night I even got drunk and went to the top of a building and looked down, contemplating suicide. After a little while and talks with multiple people, I eventually ended up accepting what happened, and I contacted her to try to accept the breakup and end things smoothly because anger was the last emotion I needed piled up on top of the low self-esteem, grief, and depression I already had. I called her and accepted the breakup, and I guess we both wanted to get things off of our chest, and we talked for a bit. After talking for some amount of time, the conversation steered to Mark. I ended up asking if they were still talking and if she liked him. She said yes to both questions. She sent me screenshots of what they talked about after deleting a few messages, which she admitted to but told me it was nothing, which obviously I didn't believe. She sent Mark screenshots of my messages and told him all of my business with my depression, my grandmother, my suicidal tendencies, and our relationship. She sent him the breakup messages as well to prove to him that she was single because he claimed to not want to get involved in our business. This sent me into a frenzy and enraged me as I did nothing to this girl to provoke that. I was the perfect gentleman, and I got dissed all while she was entertaining the bad boy who could care less about this girl. Throughout my anger, I never disrespected her, I kept my composure, and I asked her, why? What did I do to deserve getting treated like this? Why was I getting treated like garbage? She gave me a fake apology after I insisted that I was owed one, and she must have had enough of seeing her own wrongs because, in the middle of me talking, she hung up and blocked me. I couldn't take it. I couldn't take the fact that after all of the wrongs she did to me, she still was so stuck in her ways to ignore what she did and get cocky about it. I couldn't take the fact that after all the love, support, gifts, dates, trips, and money spent on this girl, I still got tossed to the side. Long story not so short, I still went through the emotional ups and downs, going from angry to hurt, and during my anger, I ended up cursing her and her mom out, but it got me nowhere. For some strange reason, I still miss her. I still want to apologize. I still feel empty, and I feel as if days go by so slow. It's been weeks since I've been blocked, and I don't know where I am anymore. I was left with no self-confidence because the tall, handsome guy who could give a frack about women still wins after I give all my efforts into being the perfect man. I still feel ugly and out of shape. I tried to date, and I just ended up not wanting to do anything anymore. I don't know where I am right now emotionally, and that's the worst feeling you could have. That's where the story ends, I guess. I don't know where to go from here. And now for the top comments. The thing about being young is that you sometimes don't see the road ahead. You hit a roadblock, it will hurt, and then someone will walk up to you and say hi. You get to a better place. You seem like a good guy who fell for the wrong girl. The last time I looked at the census, it seemed to be more than one female out there. You're going to hurt, and I'm sorry about that, but I promise you it will get better. Good luck. Some women don't care what you do for them, they will still cheat, it's how you make them feel that matters. They won't love you for your loyalty. You ignored a ton of red flags. There is a life lesson there somewhere. Young love. Don't worry about it. We all go through this stage at some point. You'll get over her. Time is a healer. What's your say on this? Do you have a similar story? Comment below, and don't forget to like and subscribe.